And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution is not going to get that man today. No, because I'm going to get him.
This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It's Thursday, April 11th, 2013. This is a live broadcast. I'm Doug Hagmann. In studio with me is my son, my co-host, Joe Hagmann. Today, you're about to hear 3 hours of unbiased news, analysis, information, uncensored. We answer to no one except our Creator. Folks, this is information that you need to know in these very perilous times. For those new to the show, we broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find us at our home base on the internet at HomelandSecurityUS.com. That's HomelandSecurityUS.com, not affiliated with any government website. And, of course, we are simulcast in video during show times, thanks to the Christians United Broadcasting Network at the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.com. That's the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.com. If you want to watch us in full high-def video, if the sight of us does not deter you. And that's where I will be kind of hanging out as soon as I turn on my camera, my studio camera, which will be momentarily. But, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight, and I want to thank you for your belief and your trust in us as we walk through this minefield together, whether you are in America or in Canada, or, as we have heard before the show, in Israel, in South America, in Latin America, Panama, our listeners in New Zealand. We have them all over the world. We want to say welcome to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, Joe. It's great to be here.
Yeah, glad to be here. Another long day. Finishing up some things that we have to do. We have tax season going on. We had family things that we were finishing up, and closing a chapter in our lives, at least with our family, and some issues that we've been dealing with for the last year. And
2 years, as a matter of fact, 2 years.
Been a big weight on your shoulders, and finally coming to a close on that, and can get you to focus now. You've been doing a fantastic job, but really though,
thank you.
Things will be a little bit easier for you in the coming days and weeks with that burden gone. But with that, I want to say hello and good evening to everybody. Glad you are tuning in. We have a lot of news, information, audio, sound bites, and things to break down and get into as more crazy news and crazy talking heads continue to mislead the people as the global central powers are setting up their new world order. And I say new world order, and we'll continue to use that phrase for those special people from MSNBC and Fox News and the accepted mainstream media that have come out in full swing and continue to do so. And
we do want to dedicate this program tonight to Rachel Maddow.
Yeah, you want me to just go ahead and play that clip, and that can be the basis for, or we can wait?
Well, yeah, no, I think, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's important for us to understand, really for everyone to understand what is taking place here in America, in the Western media, which is to say in the media in the free world. Here's what's taking place. Joe found this clip, and when he played it for me, all right, I was looking for some type of device to hang myself from the ceiling. Okay,
He got up and left.
you know, but here's the issue with this video audio clip. This is the perfect example of a straw man argument. And the truth is buried within this particular clip, but you see, people are, and I want to say this, if I can engage in a moment of self-promotion, folks. If you go to CanadaFreePress.com, our sisters to the north, and equally important, HomelandSecurityUS.com, our home base. I've written an article that was published today, and I want to thank Canada Free Press for publishing it. It's called Silence of the Lambs in America. This has been on my heart and on my mind for a long time. We had talked a little bit about Dietrich Bonhoeffer. You know, it's 68 years ago this week of his execution, his needless execution, but about what's taking place in America and what Dietrich Bonhoeffer represents. I don't talk too much about the cheap grace versus costly grace, but what I do talk about is what's happening in America today and what's happening in the West today. And if you don't mind, and if you see fit, and if you feel it's appropriate, share this article with your pastor, with your fellow Christians, with your family. I think it's important. And again, make your own mind up if you see fit to share it. And if you do, please like it on Facebook via the article, or via the links at the various articles. And the reason we ask you to do that is not for an attaboy pat on the back to see how many likes we can get, but we found that by doing that, the articles or the information, the message itself gets shared through this wondrous technology. Now, I know some of you don't care for Facebook. We place only things on there, of course, with messages like this. But the more people that read this, I believe, the more people will understand what is taking place in America, and especially in light of the headlines. But as Joe said, he found this, and I got to tell you something. We were doing a lot of research. I mean, we have been going pretty much. We've been going 18 hours a day for the last several days. Well, for the last several weeks, but for the last several days, it's been a hard 18 hours each day, 18 to 20.
Yeah, and some rough hours, some all-nighters, some.
I take a stick to poke him to see if he's dead at his desk. Just to make sure he's not dead. But you wouldn't know it from looking, for example, at our website. But there's a lot of research that we're conducting behind the scenes, and there are phone calls after phone calls and phone calls and meetings and meetings and meetings and meetings, to the extent where we enter one meeting and there's another one right behind that, and all of a sudden what was 8 o'clock in the morning and a one pot of coffee turns into 7 o'clock at night and 9 pots of coffee. It's that progressive. The reason for this is to bring you this information. But that said, this particular clip is the basis for the program tonight, and therefore we're dedicating this broadcast to Rachel Maddow, to her intellectual bankruptcy. Well,
let's dedicate it to her, and then we'll have a subsection dedicated, or a lower dedication. They'll share, and the whole mainstream media. This is a calling out of the media.
That's even better, because rather than make it personal and make it sound very
because this is just the latest of a series of attacks on the way Americans believe and the way Americans feel, and especially those Americans who understand how our nation has been taken over by the globalist through the United Nations and central banks.
You see why we are a father and son team, why it's necessary to have a father and son team? Hey, the father learns from the son at times. It's great, but without any further ado, take a listen to this clip, and then we're going to put everything into context and explain why this is so important.
Yeah, this is Rachel Maddow, Lizard People, New World Order,
6 days old,
UN Arms Treaty Conspiracy Theories. Here we go.
Lizard people, lizard person to be more accurate. The percentage of Americans who believe lizard people control our societies by gaining political power is 4%. Nice work, America. I mean, still, it's more than 1 million Americans who believe it, but statistically speaking, this is one conspiracy theory too far for us as a nation. An overwhelming majority of Americans do not believe that lizard people secretly control our society. Phew. We know that thanks to a poll question from Public Policy Polling. PPP does real polling. They correctly predicted the outcome in all 50 states in this past presidential election, for example. But from time to time, PPP does polls that really honestly have to be designed just to make good conversation at bars and parties. Like when they settled the age-old question of whether Wisconsinites like cheese better or beer better. It was overwhelmingly cheese. I would not have predicted that. Well, this week, PPP released the findings of a poll of how much Americans believe in conspiracy theories. That's where we got our lizard people numbers from. We also learned that the percentage of Americans who believe that a secret power elite with a globalist agenda is conspiring to eventually rule the world through an authoritarian world government or new world order, that percentage is 28%. But of the respondents who self-identified as very conservative, what was the percentage of very conservative Americans who said they do believe that a secret power elite with a globalist agenda is conspiring to eventually rule the world through an authoritarian world government or new world order? It wasn't 28%, it was 45%. Almost half of very conservative respondents fear the authoritarian new world order. Here's another one. Do you believe global warming is a hoax? 51% overall say no, global warming is a real thing. But of the folks who voted for Mitt Romney in this last election, what percentage of those people believe that there's no such thing as global warming and it's all a big hoax? 61%. Nearly two-thirds of the people who voted for Mitt Romney say that global warming is a hoax. Did the Bush administration mislead the country on weapons of mass destruction in Iraq? Definitely no. No, not if you're a Republican. There was no misleading. 3/4 of Republicans polled and say no, there was no misleading heading into Iraq. If you ask Democrats, the response is almost exactly the opposite. 3/4 say yes. I mean, a lot of Americans of all stripes are susceptible to one theory or another, conspiracy theories and the like. But it seems like Republicans and conservatives and people who voted for Mitt Romney are more susceptible than the rest of America to conspiracy theories, especially about people being out to get them. And looking at the way the elected Republicans approach governing right now might be a clue as to why Republicans are more susceptible to conspiracies than the rest of us. This is the International Arms Trade Treaty. It's 13 pages long. It's from the United Nations. The idea is for countries that sell weapons to other countries to consider what those weapons might be used for in those other countries. If those weapons are likely to be used for genocide, for example, then you shouldn't sell them. Well, this week the UN passed the Arms Trade Treaty by an overwhelming margin. 154 countries voted for it. Only 3 countries voted against it. The United States delegation voted for it. Now the treaty goes to President Obama, who's reportedly expected to sign it. But then, of course, it goes to the United States Senate, where it needs 67 votes in order to be ratified, in order to actually count. The prospects for that are not good. Because to Republicans, this is not a treaty about not selling weapons to some other country that's going to use them for genocide. To Republicans, this is a conspiracy to take your guns, just like everything else. Tea Party freshman Senator Ted Cruz tweeting, quote, UN Arms Treaty should be rejected outright. It's international gun regulation, plain and simple, and it must never be ratified. Oklahoma's James Inhofe says Americans will not stand for internationalists limiting and infringing on their constitutional rights. Democrats Max Baucus and Joe Manchin were signed on to that principled stance. 2 Democrats, 31 Republicans. Senator Rand Paul's reaction to the UN Arms Treaty, quote, gun grabbers around the globe believe they have it made. So please send me some money. Late last month, in a sort of trial run, the Senate voted against the treaty. It was a mostly party line vote, a handful of red state Democrats joining all the Republicans. And so even though the United States officially joined with 153 other countries in voting to pass this treaty, our country is almost certain to end up on the same side of this issue as the three nations that said no. The three nations that said no are Iran, Syria, and North Korea. And now, because of the Republicans and some conservative Democrats, us too. Iran, Syria, North Korea, and the United States. Conspiracy theories can be fun. They make the world seem exciting and like there's a secret special meaning to things that only you know about if you're smart enough to understand how things really work. Conspiracy theories can be fun. But when they start seeping into the way one of our two political parties approaches basic questions of governing, they're less fun. Maybe we should give the lizard people a shot at running things around here. Maybe they'd do a better job. Now it's time for the last word with Lawrence O'Donnell.
There you have it. Rachel Maddows. Mocking people's belief. Not only that, saying basically the intellectual level of the people who believe these things are gone. And
well, yeah. And folks, what this is, and I'm sure you've all heard the term straw man argument, but let's just very quickly go over this. This is what the mainstream media and people like Piers Morgan and others, Matthews and Maddow and others, or not Matthews, yeah, Matthews and others engage in. It's a rhetorical means that's meant to easily prove that your position, our argument, is well, let me rephrase that. It's a rhetorical device that's meant to easily prove that a person's position or argument is superior to an opposing argument. It's regarded as a logical fallacy because at its very core, the person using this mechanism, this way of attacking the actual issue, misrepresents the other person's argument. Did you notice how she brought in the lizard people, then the cheese and the beer, and okay, it's the distractions and detractions, but they do this because they can weaken the core argument. They can actually attack the actual core by weakening the argument, by making it less substantial.
Correct. They throw in that lizard people references, and they use the word conspiracy theories. We heard clips I played from Lawrence O'Donnell to Chris Matthews to Ed Schultz, all doing the same thing. CNN, when they interviewed Mark Poltok after his report came out. But
it's a perversity of logic,
right?
That people tend to grab a hold of. And the only thing now, what did you remember from that clip? What's the biggest thing you remember from that clip?
From Maddow's clip?
Yeah, I mean, if you just
that 28% of the American people believe in a new world order, that to me is a higher number than I would have expected.
Okay, well, most people I suspect would say, oh, you mean the lizard people, the crazy people about the lizard people? That's kind of like what I was thinking. But I understand what you're saying.
I listened to it a few times though, so
all right.
But let me play this for you. This is some of the. I've played various clips of presidents calling for a new world order and other policy makers and people in high positions of authority, from the economic realm to the religious realm to the political realm. But I actually found something good today, a compilation of these that can actually, it made a good audio. Here is the top New World Order quotes from several different leaders, and I'm going to play this right now. It's about 5 minutes, and then we're going to really get into what is going on with the UN, the guns treaty, and
this is all relative. It all relates.
And North Korea and Syria. Here we go.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
there's a need for a new world order, but it has different characteristics in different parts of the world.
The affirmative task we have now is to actually create a new world order.
A world in which there is a very real prospect of a new world order.
It's about the future of Europe and a new world order.
After 1989, President Bush said, and it's a phrase that I often use myself, that we needed a new world order.
And the hope that each of us has to build a new world order.
The pieces are in flux. Soon they will settle again. Before they do, let us reorder this world around us.
So that the problem of the Bush presidency will be the emergence of a new international order.
Within the next 4 years, we will see the emergence of a new international order.
The beginning of a new international order.
But today, with Asia already outproducing Europe, India and China are clearly becoming part of our new order. So, in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, a new world is emerging. It is a new world order with significantly different and radically new challenges.
I think his task will be to develop an overall strategy for America in this period when really a new world order can be created. It's a great opportunity. It isn't just a crisis.
That this crisis, in the way that has developed, will require some kind of world governance.
Good evening, everybody. President Obama and British Prime Minister Gordon today calling for a new world order to tackle our global economic crisis.
And the President outlined his vision of a new world order in which the U.S. would participate fully.
We've got to give them a stake in creating the kind of world order that I think all of us would like to see.
So I see a world order in the future with a multipolar world order.
I think a new world order is emerging, and with it the foundations of a new and progressive era of international cooperation. We have resolved that from today we will together manage the process of globalization to secure responsibility from all and fairness to all.
And one of the ways that will drive the change is through global governance and global agreements.
But in a globalized economy, we are going to have to take global responsibilities, and there is going to have to be some semblance of global governance.
Never before has a new world order had to be assembled from so many different perceptions or on so global a scale. Nor has any previous order had to combine the attributes of the historic balance of power system with global democratic opinion and the exploding technology of the contemporary period.
There also exists an extraordinary opportunity to form for the first time in history a truly global society. Well, during the conflict with Saddam Hussein, which he handled so superbly in a short-term sense, but he kept talking about a new world order. And then President Bush, at the end of that war, promised he would give 4 graduation addresses, 4 commencement addresses, describing that new world order and what America's role was going to be in it. Turned out he gave one of those addresses and canceled the other 3 and talked about something else. That's why, because they weren't ready yet.
That in fact we're all going to have to give up a little bit of our sovereignty in order to make the world work.
And I strongly believe India will be a central actor in the new world order.
And this present window of opportunity during which a truly peaceful and interdependent world order might be built will not be here for too long. Already there are powerful forces at work that threaten to destroy all of our hopes and efforts to erect an enduring structure of global cooperation.
Are you optimistic a global system can happen from what we've heard so far?
It could happen, and in fact it's in the works.
I mean, but sir, just one thing, we could go on about how, your family committed all these acts against society, but we just...
All right, that was a compilation of people. You heard Obama calling for a new world order, Biden, Gordon Brown, who was the head of the World Bank, Zbigniew Brzezinski, Henry Kissinger, as well as many others, George Bush, talking about the New World Order, where the founders of the UN's vision could come to fruition.
And Joe, as you've often pointed out, David Rockefeller, the internationalist, in his book of the same name, New York Times bestseller, he writes, he writes, for more than a century, ideological extremists at either end of the political spectrum have seized upon well-publicized incidents, such as my encounter with Castro, to attack the Rockefeller family for the inordinate influence they claim we wield over American political and economic institutions. Think about that sentence for a moment. Now, he writes, some even believe that we're part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists and conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure. One world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty, and I'm proud of it. End quote.
In 1976, Congressman Larry McDonald was killed. He was later killed in on a Korean Airlines 747 that was shot down by the Soviets. Said,
interesting, by the way,
the drive of the Rockefellers and their allies is to create a one-world government combining supercapitalism, communism under the same tent, all under their control. Do I mean conspiracy? Yes, I do. I'm convinced there's such a plot, international in scope, generations old in planning, and incredibly evil in intent. And that was one of many quotes, and I have New World Order quotes from Nixon to Roosevelt to many others, but some of the more interesting ones, and the reason we're laying a foundation here is what we're going over this.
That's right, and kind of telling Rachel Maddow, hey, didn't you get the memo?
Yes.
From how many people and presidents and leaders?
Countless. I mean, I have a page of 250 quotes from different people. Some of the more evil in nature. One of Prince Philip from 1988 says, in the event I am reincarnated, I would like to return as a deadly virus in order to contribute to something to solve overpopulation. In 1991, Bernard Schneider, part of the Council of the Club of Rome, said, in searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. In their totality and in their interactions, these phenomena do constitute a common threat which demands the solidarity of all peoples. But in designating them as the enemy, we fall into the trap about which we already warned, namely mistaking systems for causes. All these dangers are caused by human intervention, and it is only through changed attitudes and behaviors that they can be overcome. The real enemy, then, is humanity itself.
And we realize, ladies and gentlemen, that a lot of you know this already, but there are new listeners that have tuned in. I've received numerous emails saying, people saying, well, what is exactly, what are you talking about, this Illuminati? Can you explain it to me, or can you explain the basis for it?
I can explain why it's relevant today, and I can give you quotes as to why it is relevant today.
Sure.
And what this goes to is what we are seeing set up through the HHS, the Obamacare. Very soon, America will be required, and this was quote is from Colonel Edward Mandell House. It's from
Colonel Edward Mandell House, by the way, was Woodrow Wilson's right-hand man.
Correct.
He set up. You've really, folks, You've got to really research this man if you want to know the background of the Fed, the background of the money system that we have. But more importantly, he's the author of Philip Drew, Administrator. You can find the PDF online. It's a very difficult read, but essentially he talks about socializing, creating a social or dictatorship out of America, and with him being the dictator. But it gives you an insight into the mentality not only of Colonel Edward Mandell House, but of the people around him and of the very group that we're talking about. A very key individual, a very key player.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
He says, very soon, every American will be required to register their biological property, that's you and your children, in a national system designed to keep track of the people that will operate under the ancient system of pledging. By such methodology, we can compel people to submit to our agenda, which will affect our security as a charge back from our fiat paper currency. Every American will be forced to register or suffer being able to work and earn a living. They will be our chattels, property, in quotations.
Exactly.
We will hold a security interest over them forever by operation of the law merchant under the scheme of the secured transactions. They will be stripped of their rights and given a commercial value designed to make a profit. They will be none the wiser. For not one man in a million could ever figure out the plans, and if by accident one or two should figure it out, we will have in our arsenal plausible deniability. So right there, we see some of the foundations for the mark of the beast. It's a nobody will be able. He goes on to say the Depression was the calculated shearing of the public by the world money powers, triggered by the planned sudden shortage of supply of all money. The one world government leaders and their ever-close bankers have now acquired full control of the money and credit machinery of the U.S. via the creation of the privately owned Federal Reserve.
And we can take that to this level today, not only of the Federal Reserve, but of the IMF, the World Bank. These are all central banking systems that will give way to ultimately a one world government, one world financial system.
Correct. And there are many other quotes that talk about nobody will be able to buy or sell. Assessment of the New World by Dr. Kirk E. Cox said the New World Order under the UN will reduce everything to one common denominator. The system will be made of a single currency, single centrally financed government, single tax system, single language, single political system, a one world court of justice, a single state religion. Each person will have a registered number, without which he will not be allowed to buy or sell. There will be one universal world church. Anyone who refuses to take part in this system will have no right to exist.
Exactly.
So why is it important and why is it relevant today? Because we see that this is their plan. And this has not been carried out yet or implemented. But we know that this is the plan of Satan. And we know how it ends. And it fulfills what the Bible says will be the end time of history, of this earth.
I just received an email from Barbara who says, why are you playing Maddow and the hideous voices of Bush, Kissinger, and so on? You're driving this listener off. I come here to feel more secure and hopeful. And Barbara, let me just say this. Welcome to the family, and we are attempting to make you feel more secure and hopeful. But in order to do so, what you've got to have is you've got to have the perspective of what we're up against.
Yeah,
you've.
I mean, this is what it gets down to. We talked about yesterday. David Spangler, the head of the director of planetary initiative at the UN, said no one will enter the New World Order unless he will take a pledge to worship Lucifer. We have Robert Mueller, is a self-confessed Luciferian and said this: if Christ came back to Earth, his first visit would be to the United Nations to see if his dream of human oneness and brotherhood had come true.
Right.
Just disgusting.
Again, what we're laying out, and we are replacing, we're replacing fear, or attempting to replace a fear with knowledge. We do know how the story ends. We do know that in the end, that God, God's people, God's chosen people, God's people, will succeed against this evil cabal of people. But we can't be so naive to avoid recognizing what we're up against, what the plans are, and see. This goes back to what we say, what we've been saying. And I spoke with a gentleman, a good friend, involved in the intelligence world, and he said, we were talking about Scripture, and he said, if you look back at the apostles, the Jesus' disciples, Jesus gave each one a different task, and sometimes sometimes there were two people, two disciples or apostles went out together, but in general, each had their own area of concern. And in fact, I think, if I recall the discussion correctly, he was relating to me a situation where the Scripture said, well, one of the disciples said, hey, you should stay out of, I think it was John. Jesus kind of chided John about getting into Daniel's business when Daniel had something to do. And basically, stick to your own source, stick to your own business, read your own mail, not someone else's. Were the words he used. But the fact of the matter is, we know how the story ends. We have to play our own particular zone. We're called by God for this point in time, and I truly believe this. Each and every one of us are called by God to be here. We are here for a specific purpose. Now, we don't know where that purpose is, and we do have a tendency, by the way. I'll say this: to overstate or to make
we don't know what our purpose is?
Some people might not know what our purpose. I mean, it's with specificity. Okay, you know what I mean. For example, we know we're here.
Us.
Oh, no.
Because we're learning and have found out our purpose. But yes, many people are learning.
You might be here and you might be thinking, well, wait a minute. What's my job here at this point in time as a Christian, as a follower of Jesus? What am I supposed to do? And that's something very personal. You've got to pray about that to find out what your job is. But a lot of times, too, we have and we've been getting emails, too, and speaking about fear. Well, what's going to happen with North Korea? When is this going to happen? What are they going to do next? And sometimes when people talk about issues like this, there's too much specificity. When really the generalities are what's important, the specificity or the very tactics or the issues. The details in certain cases are not as important as the larger picture. So, but to answer your question, Barb, and to others who might be thinking, well, why are you doing this? Well, the reason is you've got to know your enemy. I mean, if you are called to play that position of defense, of being a part of God's firewall against this Luciferian agenda, then you've got to know you've got to know the opposition, what you're facing. If you don't want to know, and I understand, maybe it's not your position, then don't listen. And I'm not trying to sound anything other than very genuine. But what we're talking about in the larger sense too, not to get off track, is the foundation here. We all know this, that the Luciferian agenda, the Illuminati, the people behind the puppet masters of the puppets that we see, they're engaging in programming. The programming, mental programming, mind control. Yes, this is a real thing. That's part of it. What you heard is part of it. Now, knowing that, even before getting into that, and we're not going to get into that tonight, but you've got to, it's important to understand that the philosophy underlying why the Illuminatists are programming people is important. All groups have goals, and the Illuminatists are no exception. Money making, for example, or the creation of their wealth is certainly not their ultimate goal. It's a means to an end, but it's not their ultimate goal. This endpoint or goal is no less than to rule the world. That's the ultimate goal of the Illuminati, and to subjugate you, the listener, and every one of us to their slavery. They've got a plan similar, very much similar to the Soviet Union's old 5 and 10 year plans. And this is actually what these people, these power brokers themselves believe and teach their followers as the truth. Now, whether they actually succeed is another matter. Of course, we know how the story ends, but people have to understand, and we have there are a lot of people out there that have a tendency to think that, oh my gosh, this is the end. It's like somebody holding up the sign, the end of the world is here. This is a process. We're engaged in a process. North Korea is part of a process. The gun confiscation is part of a process.
And I do have some information regarding North Korea.
Right.
I did send it to you also, so we can talk about that. But back real quick to one of the quotes I mentioned about people that the people who are saying that you're going to need to have a new identification, biological property in a database, national database to track, or else you will not be able to buy or sell. You will not even have the right to exist if you don't go along with this. Why is that relevant? Even it was quoted back in the between 1913
early
and 21.
20th century. You're right.
Well, Revelations 13, Revelations chapter 13, verses 15, 16, 17, and 18. The last there, 15. And he had a power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed, and causeth all, both small, great, rich, poor, free, and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or forehead, and that no man might buy or sell, unless he have the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. That is stating what we are seeing as their plan. And we have the Obamacare legislation that's been enacted, basically handing over the control of the entire United States health system to the federal government. And basically they can now, and it is on the books now, you have to be understand their language and go through their documents, but they have it on the books to where they can implement this. They have everything ready, all the laws, all the personnel, and this is their plan, this is their goal. They are going to do this as it is prophesied about, and that is the end of the earth as we know it. As things continue to change at a rapid pace, North Korea, the wars and rumors of wars, the earthquakes that we continue to see that are reaching, we see higher and higher. What was last week? There was just so many 5.0 earthquakes. And in Standale's book, he talks about a time from, I think, 1900 to 1920 or 1930 where there was an average of 2 5.0 earthquakes a year, if that. Now we're seeing, 10 a day. 20 a day, depending on what day it is. We are seeing and living prophecy that has been spoken about for thousands of years. Matthew, in the book of Matthew, when they ask the Lord what will be the signs of the end times, he says twice, make sure you are not deceived. Many false prophets will come in my name. There will be wars, rumors of wars, famine, pestilence, earthquakes in divers places. And it goes on to say, see that, you not be troubled. All these things must come to pass. But
Right.
the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. And you go through Mark and Luke and John, and they all say the same thing. And back to Daniel, the book of Daniel, which was written hundreds of years before Jesus was born, not only talks about Jesus, but talks about the end days. And Revelations, the book of Revelations, further explains Daniel and the end and how that is coming about.
Well, let me interrupt you. May I interrupt you here because I just received another email from Barb, and it's interesting because this email has struck me. She writes, "Why are you reading these horrible things about the New World Order when things are already so tense that most find it hard to get through another day waiting for something to happen?" Now, Barb, and ladies and gentlemen, just think about that statement that you mentioned, and ladies and gentlemen, contemplate on that. What scripture applies here? During the phone call with my source, my intelligence source, he referenced Ecclesiastes verse 19, basically paraphrased, "Those that know not change, fear not God," basically, and I'm paraphrasing that. And I think we have to take a look at this. Everyone's just got to take a deep breath. Ladies and gentlemen, what we're seeing is a process. It is a process that is not going to end with the end of the world tomorrow. I mean, look, I might have missed the memo, and I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but certainly as Scripture dictates, or as we see in Scripture, there's a lot of trouble and turmoil and a lot of ground that has to be covered. We're not at the end of the world. We're not at this great precipice that is going to take us into this black abyss forever. I mean, that's no. What we're seeing is a process unfold that has been written about in Scripture and in the Bible. And the reassurances that you are looking for, now I'm speaking to the writer, that you are looking for, can be found in the Bible, in Scripture, in the Word of God, because we know how this ends. But to not talk about this, I mean, we could sing psalms and songs and hymns, but would that do anything for us? Of course not. So it's the opening of our show. Do you want the truth? Well, perhaps you can't handle the truth. And I'm not speaking to you personally. To anyone personally.
You make a good point, because it's not that people can't handle the truth. It's sometimes it's overwhelming. And it turns people off. They get that feeling, overwhelming feeling, that stress, and they don't want to. It's like watching videos of war scenes. In the beheading videos you used to show me.
Yes.
I did not want to watch them, but you made me watch them. And I'm glad you made me watch them, because, it brought things to reality. It showed me that these things are happening and these things are real.
Right.
Whether I liked it or not, whether I wanted to see it or not.
But
whether I believed they were happening or not.
But exactly. And we're to the point now where we have to put on our big boy pants, understand, and really understand what is taking place, why it's taking place, and who are the actors in this. Plain and simple, who are the actors in this, and for what reason, for what to what ends, and the ends. And once again, whether these people are going to actually succeed is totally another matter. We see how the story ends in the Bible. But to not provide the agenda, then we are being irresponsible to our listeners and to the people who are looking for information, because we as Christians have a duty to ourselves to be able to make it through, to live through another day, to live through the crisis, to make it through the crisis, whatever crisis it might be. And we have a duty to our families, if we have families, to educate them as to the best of our ability, to the best that they can accept that information, and inform them as to what is taking place and why it's taking place. Otherwise, we are just doing nothing. So just to answer that emailer's question, I hope that answers that concern. But it sounds as if, and we know everyone is stretched, and as I said on Sunday's show, it's like we're all stretched like rubber bands, and that, we're about to break. But understanding, and Barbara, if I would suggest this, rather than continue listening to this show, it sounds as if there's an issue that maybe it's overwhelming. I would definitely recommend the show with Pastor David Langford and Steve Quayle in place of what you're hearing tonight. Re-listen to that, because that will provide you with the spiritual strength necessary and put things in perspective. But the bottom line here, but getting back to the point at hand, is what we're seeing right now. We are exposing the tactics of the enemy. This is what we're doing. We're exposing the tactics of the enemy so we can be equipped and armed to fight. But not just fight on a practical level, fight with the spiritual armaments provided to us through the Word of God and with the armor of the Word of God. And I think that a lot of times, I got to tell you, a lot of shows will not talk about God or the spiritual aspect, the spiritual side of this fight.
No, you're right. And I heard Sean Hannity on the way over here saying that the solution to the world's problem is conservatism. And I just shook my head and said, these people, whether they get it or not, they definitely aren't explaining it to the people.
Did Sean Hannity say that?
Yes. I had a very uplifting conversation with Brother Marcus Samuel today.
And folks, if you don't know who Brother Marcus Samuel is, he is the real deal missionary working on
with Native Americans.
Right. And go ahead and tell them, because people need to really understand that this guy is out there in the field every day.
Yes, God. He said he is encountering spiritual battles. Not only that, he's said he prayed with me, and he also I told him I would pray for him, and I asked that all of us pray for him and his ministry, that he continues to have the support to do what he's doing and helping these people to the best of his ability. And the conversation we had was about the Lord and about understanding the word of the Lord and prayer and discernment. And when I got off the phone, it was like
it's an amazing thing.
Right. I was just so grateful that he called and shared the message that he did with me. But
we're going to have him on our program. But
yeah,
but Joe,
he said he'd come on when he had something timely and fresh.
I just want to. I'm sorry. Let me go back to this, and I know that we're kind of skipping, but I just want to address Barb and the people who feel like Barb, because I just got another email from someone else saying, "Boy, I feel the same way too." Folks. Okay, folks. Yeah, Joe just motioned for me. I was just curious. Think back. Think of, to use an analogy, think of us being on the Titanic. You listening in Australia, you listening in Israel, regardless of where you are, we're all together and we're on the Titanic. Now, we don't want to be on the Titanic, well, at least not after we know it's in trouble. But think about us, all of us, being on the Titanic. And I use that analogy purposely, very deliberately, because the Titanic sank. This month is the anniversary month of the sinking of the Titanic, and the Titanic has got an interesting story behind it. But isn't it interesting? Everybody's situation is different. Think of the Titanic sinking. If you were on that boat, would you rather know that, hey, there's trouble, and that maybe you should be putting on a life vest or making your way to a lifeboat? Or would you rather stay and listen to the band that continued to play as the boat was sinking, only to find that at some point, hey, where's this water coming from? My shoes are getting wet. I don't think this is supposed to happen. This is where we are, ladies and gentlemen, together as a family. We are on the Titanic, and I believe it's our job to tell everybody, not in an alarming fashion, but let's all very orderly, let's all move toward the lifeboats. Let's all get our stuff together, whatever we need to do. Let's all make sure we're getting ready. Let's grab our loved ones. Let's make it to the lifeboats. Wouldn't you rather be making your way to the lifeboats if you were on the Titanic after it struck the iceberg? Even though the people had said, this boat's not going to sink. It can't sink. It's unsinkable. No. When Noah was building the ark, wouldn't you rather, or if that wouldn't you have rather wanted to be part of that, perhaps, than mock that, or to turn your head and say, he's just nuts. Why is he building an ark? But back to the Titanic example. Again, we're all on this Titanic. We're all in this together. Ladies and gentlemen, we're all in this together. The Titanic didn't sink in 1 second. It wasn't floating and all of a sudden, bam, it just hit the bottom of the ocean. It was a process. Now, granted, the Titanic sinking was a rapid process. I mean, it took a while, but in terms of the size of the ship and other factors, it was rapid, but yet it was a process. So during this process, all of us on the Titanic together, grab our hands, calmly walk toward the lifeboats, calmly get in the lifeboats.
In other words, the lifeboat is our relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ.
Absolutely.
And
but
first and foremost,
grab your Bible along the way, because the lifeboat is Jesus, right? Correct. But also, make sure if they had them in those days, the life vests or whatever, maybe a snack bar or whatever, candy bar to stick in your pocket in case you're on the lifeboat a little bit too long, and hey, even maybe a flare gun or some sort of, maybe a kitchen knife or a piece of cutlery in case you need it on the lifeboat. Grab what you need, but take our hands and walk in an orderly fashion to the lifeboats.
Yeah, and the foundation we need to build in truth, to understand and be able to discern what truth is in the media and the world and from your family. We have to have our foundation built of rock, and that analogy is used in Scripture. That foundation has to be built first, and all other truths can be revealed to us after that. But it is our own personal salvation, our own personal walk with the Lord that needs to be established first before we can do anything else.
God, by His Spirit, Joe, I didn't mean to interrupt. I thought you were...
No, go ahead.
But God, by His Spirit, will give each and every one of us divine insight.
We have
insight
authority
that's personal to them. Yes,
we have authority not only will the discernment become much easier as our relationship grows, our authority and boldness for the Lord will continue to grow to a point where you won't have anything else in your mind. You won't want to do anything else. As the scriptures state, it will be better than good food to read the scriptures and understand them. It will be your lifeblood. It is what will hold you together. The words from John, writing, from being in prison, saying, I know my fate, but you guys have an opportunity, and that opportunity you cannot pass up. I mean, who wants to be on this earth? We see the evolution arguments, we see the New Age religion, the evil of this world has come back to not attack the world, but has come to attack the real believers, the true remnant that is left in Christ. And that is what they have divided it down so much that the real remnant of the Lord is under such heavy attack, and the people that are in the Lord can feel it.
Absolutely.
They can see change that is manifesting in the physical and from the spiritual. Things are getting very confusing for those who are do not have that foundation from a biblical foundation. As it says in the scriptures, that it will become confounded, their knowledge. It will become confused. And that is because it is not a godly knowledge. It is not a godly foundation they have. Therefore, everything else built upon that.
Right. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report this 11th day of April 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me is my co-host, Joe Hagmann. And I just was told I didn't have my camera on, so I'm going to turn it on. And you can catch us at the Hagmann and HagmannReport.com on video. And of course, well, we're going to be right back after these messages. Grab our hands as we make an orderly path to the lifeboats. Hi, folks. Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eilena Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have the long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Brick Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP Brick Packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com. Or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
You better wake up fast and listen to this, America. The Obama campaign has launched attack squads disguised as truth teams dedicated to intimidating and silencing all political dissent carried over the internet that criticizes the Marxist Obama. Truth Squad specifically focused on covering up Obama's endless trail of lies, corruption, and subversion, and using the Gestapo power of our own government to police and censor the Internet and shut down websites that dare to carry the real truth about Obama's Marxist coup. Remember the names of these Gestapo-style agencies that work right there in your neighborhood. KeepingHisWord.com, KeepingGOPHonest.com, and AttackWatch.com. KGB, SS, and Gestapo-style police state gangster organizations that work to silence the important voices of patriot dissent, some of which have already been shut down by Obama's orders. Adolf Hitler would have been...
Physics.com. You can buy a horologium nocturnum. This was a navigational device used in the 15th century by navigators at night to tell time by the stars. It's beautifully...
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if you heard that distortion during the commercials, but I cut that short because I could not have that in my headphones or my eardrums will be bleeding shortly.
Yeah, exactly.
That was a quick first hour. And,
it was. But I think we laid an important foundation here. As I said before, and Joe, you reinforced this, what we're experiencing with North Korea, with the gun grab, with all of the headlines we're seeing, all the white noise that we're seeing, all of the pounding and saying, you know, there's confiscation over here, there's this new law pending here with the guns. Oh, we realize that, and we're going to be getting heavily into this news this hour. But understand, once again, that this is a process. God, by His Spirit, will give you divine insight into where you need to be, and it's going to be personal to you. I can guarantee you that. You know, we can give you the broad generalities of things that are going on and put it in perspective using our special Hagmann and Hagmann 3D glasses, which that's just a fun thing that we say. But looking beyond the headlines in depth into the news, into the analysis, and that's what we try to do. You know, we try to get deep down, dig deep into this, and see the picture within the picture. And North Korea, for example, is that little picture in the bigger picture. The dollar collapse, that's that little picture within the picture. The gun confiscation, the little picture within the picture. And, you know, people ask for, well, you know, what's North Korea going to do? Just as an example before I turn over to Joe for the news. Well, what are they going to launch, or are they going to just, is this bluster, and so on and so forth? Well, we've got to realize that you know, we can give you only so much. We're in a zone here, as my friend likes to say. We cannot give you with exact precision of what's going to take place, but we can tell you, you know, what appears to be taking place now. Just about Korea, before I turn it over to Joe here, there's this definite agenda here of North Korea to. Of course, they're interested in their survival, but they want a unification of the peninsula under Kim Jong-un. They want to be recognized as a world nuclear power. They want to get U.S. forces off the peninsula in order, as a stepping stone, to reunite the peninsula, of course. Korea has got the fourth largest army. It's on the planet. So, but what we're seeing here is a cult-like family, a cult/mob family under this Kim Jong-un, but really Kim Jong-il, that clan, that mob clan of the family is in power. And it's interesting because the Koreans, North Koreans, believe that if they die in the process, kind of like Islamic Muslims do, if they die for jihad, then of course they're going to be rewarded in the afterlife. So do the Koreans. I did not know that. I was talking to my friend Pat Campbell from WFAQ out of Tulsa, and he had a professor from Georgetown on, and who was saying that this is their belief system. But what we're seeing here in North Korea today, folks, and think about this. You talk about an incredible scenario. There are 23 million people in North Korea who are suffering, who are experiencing suffering the equivalent of what we saw in the World War II Holocaust. That's how bad it is in North Korea. Boy, if our prayers need to go places, it's for the victims of those in North Korea. And now, of course, they have missiles. Their current missiles right now have a range of 2,500 kilometers. Don't forget, in 1998, a lot of people have forgotten this. In 1998, Korea had test fired their earlier version of their missile. It was a successful launch, and the protection, by the way, I just want to say this, the protection, Japan, South Korea. Japan has Patriot PAC-3, advanced Patriot missile systems to protect their country. South Korea has the PAC-2 missiles still, which are merely anti-aircraft missile or anti-aircraft batteries as opposed to the anti-missile batteries. So they're a little bit more vulnerable to a potential strike. But don't forget, we're dealing with a madman, and we're dealing with humans. And anytime we deal with humans, even under the control of the Illuminati, it's kind of like a dog that gets off its chain. It's still a dog. It's still a mad dog. Still within the fence. We'll say a fenced yard, but it's on the chain. The agenda, the larger agenda, meaning the fenced yard, I mean, it still exists, but that dog has a mind of its own, just like this mad dog that exists in the form of Kim Jong-un and the mob/cult families in Korea. Just to put things in perspective. So you've got the 2,500 missiles that are capable of traveling 2,500 miles. You've got the previous successful test, citing 1998 of their older version of their missile, and then you've got, of course, the advanced Patriot missile systems protecting Japan, the lesser protecting South Korea. Those are the stats, basically, in a nutshell, right now, of what we have.
And in North Korea, RoboMom said in chat, they have prison camps. I watched a documentary not too long ago, Camp 51, Camp 21.
Oh, I saw part of that.
Yeah, that was hard to swallow. These people that are in these camps in North Korea are brought on a weekly basis to watch executions. They are beaten. They are starved. The women are sexually abused.
Absolutely.
It is one of the most tyrannical nations, if not the most oppressive tyrannical nation in the world right now. And this is where we are heading. I mean, what North Korea is right now is what the U.S. will look like if we continue on our current path and are not destroyed before they fulfill their goals and objectives of enslaving all of us. Hitting on some other news, hitting on some headlines. There's a leaked report. Nearly half of U.S. drone strikes in Pakistan have not been against Al-Qaeda. I found this article to be very important as we talked about the statistics of the drones and how they have been stepping up, especially under the Obama administration. He really has increased the drones dramatically, 10-fold, 20-fold, 50-fold. More so than Bush, but a trove of leaked classified reports confirmed what many had suspected. The United States drone program kills in Pakistan are not the precision strikes against top-level al-Qaeda terrorists they are portrayed as the Obama administration to be. And we've all heard the language. They are surgical strikes, these precision surgical strikes, with little to no collateral damage. But it goes on to say, this article, instead, many of the air attacks are aimed at suspected low-level tribal militants who pose no direct danger to the United States. For many, there appears to be little evidence to justify these assassinations. Top documents obtained by I don't know this name, McCathie newspapers in the U.S. show McCatchy. You're muted too.
Yeah, McCatchy News Services.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the U.S., show the locations, identities, and numbers of those attacked and killed in Pakistan, as well as explanations for why the targets were picked. The statistics illustrate the U.S. drone doctrine, which has never been defined by consecutive U.S. administrations. Between 1990 and 3,300 people are reported to have been killed in drone strikes in Pakistan since 2004, the majority during the Obama years. And it just goes on to say that in a 12-month period of 2011, 43 out of 95 drone strikes in the reports were not aimed at Al-Qaeda at all.
Right.
And 265 out of 482 people killed in those assassinations were defined as extremists. Indeed, only 6 of the men killed, less than 2%, were senior Al-Qaeda leaders. It also confirms that attacks during George Bush era were conducted on targets picked by the ISI, Pakistani's security agency, which has no obligations to comply with U.S. legal criteria.
Well, let's bring this drone issue home again, and remember Judge Andrew Napolitano asking, "Hey, does the government work for us, or do we work for the government?" And how can Obama claim the lawful power to kill whoever he wants at the same time?
And let's not forget the FBI. I think it was the head of the FBI's refusal to answer the question if Americans if the government could kill Americans on U.S. soil with drone strikes. They would not answer that question.
Right. And don't forget, this was this was the reason for Rand Paul, his 13-hour filibuster. He was upset, as well as every American, as we should be, that Obama refused to admit that he does not possess the lawful authority to kill Americans with drones. And that extends to what you were talking about. Now, the senator Rand Paul used the confirmation hearings of the current CIA director, John Brennan, as the forum to articulate the principled constitutional argument that whenever the government wants the life, liberty, or property of anyone, it can be taken without due process. And due process is the command of the Fifth Amendment. It's the the jurisprudence phrase part of this fair trial, the accompanying fair trial and such. But the bottom line is we've got these protections for all Americans, and for us to permit to see this and allow this to happen, this certainly goes against the wish and the setup of the framers that our natural rights here and the rights to life, liberty, and property elsewhere. I mean, it just goes against everything. Why is there no outcry from the progressive media about this? Of course, that's a rhetorical question, but it should be evident to everyone listening and seeing what's taking place that there will be no outcry, because this, once again, is part of that larger agenda, what we're seeing here. And Eric Holder, don't forget, his response was just a tersely worded letter to Rand Paul that he really never got, at least not initially. It was like 3 sentences. But Obama has never publicly answered the question about drones. And we must never forget that.
Who asks? I mean, he doesn't get asked the questions. People aren't allowed to bring it up. I mean, look at Robert Gibbs, who came out and said he was told not to even not acknowledge the drone program was actually legal or happening or taking place. When, in fact, he said, how can you deny it when it's part of your policy? That's the level they go to, and that's what they continue to do is just this political theater, this media theater, and we see this today. And I don't know, I thought I uploaded this clip of Joe Biden thanking MSNBC for helping get this gun law. Here it is. Biden wants to give MSNBC host an award. It's 43 seconds. I'm going to cut to this clip and then read the article, or hit part of the article. Here it is.
All right, Mr. Vice President, thank you so much. Thank you all for being with us today. It was a great discussion.
Okay, I guess I'm not going to play.
No, it doesn't matter. You get the gist of it, folks.
No, but let me read this to you. This article from, and just give you what his words were. Okay, this being reported from Fox News. Biden, MSNBC host deserves award. Vice President Joe Biden gave an interview to MSNBC's Morning Joe on gun control and heaped praise to host Joe Scarborough, saying that he and Mayor Michael Bloomberg deserved rewards for changing the gun debate in America. Hey, Joe, thank you. You have changed the debate in America. The two guys who deserved an award, if anything, gets done around here, is you and Michael Bloomberg, Biden said. And he's not the only one. There was another person thanking the media for their support. Pro-gun senator to CNN, we appreciate your support. I'm sorry, pro-gun control senator. We appreciate your support to CNN. Wednesday morning on Starting Point, anchors John Berman and Christine Roman hosted Senator Joe Manchin, a Democrat from West Virginia. Manchin. Yeah. One of two senators responsible for the compromise legislation on background checks. The segment was disgraceful. Neither the anchor challenged the senator about a single concern Second Amendment activists have with the legislation. Indeed, there were clips of Newtown families, Pierce Morgan, pledging for gun control, and Roman using the old, some say, ploy to claim legislation wasn't tough enough. The only mention of the NRA was their opposition to the bill. This out of Breitbart.
Yeah, what we have here, look, what we've got is this two senators. They've brokered this bargain on gun purchaser background checks that they feel that they can compromise with the Democrats to get this anti-gun legislation to pass the Senate. And they're going to succeed. Manchin and Toomey, Manchin of West Virginia, Toomey of Pennsylvania, both, they've got these A ratings with the National Rifle Association, have assigned this really Orwellian name to this legislation. It's called the Public Safety and Second Amendment Rights Protection Act.
Okay, I'm glad you saw that.
Oh, it's Orwellian, and it's nothing of the sort. And this is what people need to understand. What we're seeing is not what's being told to us. What we're seeing is not what's in the legislation. The measure which sponsors the plan to offer as an amendment to the main anti-gun bill, as we're seeing it pending in the Senate, which is Senate Bill 649. It would expand background checks for gun purchasers, but the critics, the people who really know what's going on here, they're saying it's going to clear the way for a national gun registry, which, folks, is the whole key to this national gun registry. This is the objective of these people. But, look, honest commentators, honest talking heads fully admit that collecting more information from more and more gun buyers won't have any effect on crime. It's not a deterrent to crime because criminals don't bother submitting themselves to any checks. Even worse, the data that would constitute this would actually constitute a de facto gun registry in and of itself, and it could be used as a mechanism to confiscate guns. So when people call us crazy for saying that this could lead to a gun confiscation type scenario, it's already in the legislation. It's there. It exists there.
Yeah, and really, at this point, aside from reporting on stories affecting the states and local, the state to local laws that they're passing, this national gun debate, this small arms treaty, it doesn't matter. The United States is over. We are not living in a constitution. We have no Bill of Rights that is upheld by any of the politicians in Washington.
No,
I'm not saying we need to let
Titanic.
We don't need to let the country go, but I don't believe we can save it. The only thing we can do is save the people, save the souls of the people in this nation who are willing to listen and because what is if we're
people have to know about this, because see,
people have to know this though, that you can, people, if they're fighting harder for their gun rights than for their than for the Lord, there's a problem. If they're fighting harder for the Constitution than for the Lord, there's a problem. And I just want to continue to hammer that point home.
But if you're not walking to the lifeboats as you're saying the prayer, there's a problem. If you're standing in your stateroom, or if you're standing next to the band listening to them play on and praying that someone is going to save you, there's a problem. Okay, so the problem is equal on both sides. What we're doing is attempting to strike a balance.
Right.
What you're saying, I understand, but don't sit there and wait for help to come to you.
Oh, I'm not saying that. We don't even have to recognize the laws as they are illegal. If we are the government, as the documents of our founding fathers wrote it out in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, we the people are the government. We don't have to go by the executive laws and fiat when it says our rights are granted to us and given to us by our Creator. Did the government make me? No.
But understand this, the reality of this bill, for example, and this bill in particular, the reality of it is while we are the government, and it's nice to say that, but here's a dose of reality. You buy a gun, and I don't care what state you're in, it would turn almost any gun owner into a felon, because you're going to trip up and do something. For example, it would regulate innocent activities, such as letting your spouse borrow your weapon for a few days. It would also forbid you from sharing a gun at a shooting range on a public land, or even on your own property. So it's turning you into a felon. Do you see what's taking place here? This law, and Toomey and Manchin have put their forces behind it. This is going to go through. This is going to pass. Folks, we are all going to be felons. We are all going to be criminals. You've got to understand that. So, but that's the practical aspect of this. That's the practical aspect of this. And look, Toomey, an otherwise principled Tea Party conservative, caving to pressure from Bloomberg's 501c4 advocacy group. I mean, what's this all about?
The Tea Party, the people, not the politicians, they wanted something. They were working towards that goal. The politicians, as always is and will be, sold them out. Okay?
Exactly.
Now we should note this in our mind as a rule, as a basically as a universal constant rule, that politicians will deceive you and will do everything in their power basically to go against you and for their own gain.
But it goes back to we're not going to have political solutions to spiritual problems. This is a spiritual problem,
right?
This and the battlefield is that yeah. Go on.
Knowing this is a spiritual problem,
right?
Their phrase "order out of chaos," does that take on a new meaning if you think about it in the spiritual world?
Well, it doesn't take on a new meaning. It takes on the meaning, I think it takes on the intended meaning, order from chaos. Because, okay, for example, what is the King James version of the Bible saying? Okay, I mean, from beginning to end, it's where are we headed? Where is the kingdom of God? Where are God's people headed? The followers of Jesus. Where are we headed? Of course, we know where we're going.
We're headed for the chopping block.
Well, yeah.
I mean, that's where they see us.
Ultimately, however, we're headed for eternal life and salvation. But the bottom line here is order from chaos is the Illuminati, is that an Illuminati plan. And as we had said before, and again, people have to, we keep going back to this. People say, well, why are you talking about the Illuminati? Why are you talking about something that happened 100 years ago? Because you've got to understand the foundation for things happened 100 years ago and 200 years ago and 1,000 years ago in biblical times. This is a satanic Luciferian issue. We're seeing this gun issue play out here, and people are looking with a very narrow focus at Toomey and Manchin and saying, "Oh, they're the Tea Party and all this." Well, as you mentioned, no order out of chaos. You've got to understand the bigger picture for the perspective in which we're talking about Toomey and Manchin being very useful idiots in this larger game or this larger scheme, this larger plan, this larger agenda of these Luciferian satanic people that want to enslave us. That's the bottom line. So
want to or have already?
Well,
I would ask that.
Are we going to? We can. No, spar, we can spar with semantics. I mean,
I'm asking.
We have.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we have an illusion of freedom. We have a report here. The Highway Patrol gave the federal government Missouri weapon permits data. Now, listen to this because this is important. It has to do with the Real ID Act.
Right. Yep.
Jefferson City, Missouri's database of concealed weapon permits was twice given to federal authorities investigating Social Security disability fraud in a move that has enraged lawmakers already angry over potential abuses in a new driver's license system. Missouri State Highway Patrol Colonel Ron Rapolgi was questioned for nearly an hour this morning by State Appropriations Committee after he revealed to Chairman Kurt Schaefer yesterday that his agency had turned over confidential data. The delivery of information to the federal authorities has become a huge issue for lawmakers since they began raising questions about new driver's license procedures. A lawsuit from Stoddard County challenges the procedures that require all supporting documents, including certificates granting concealed weapons privileges, to be scanned and retained by the DMVs. In November 2011 and again in January, Rapolgi said an agent of the Social Security Administration Office of the Inspector General received disks with data.
Right.
Each time the agent was unable to read the encryption format and destroy the disks, he said. They said no names were retrieved. That's what the Rapolgi told this committee.
This is all smoke and mirrors. But
yes,
go on.
The intention was to cross-check names on the concealed carry list with the agency's list of those with disabilities attributed to mental illness.
That's correct. And therein, this is the nugget that we're. This is the story of the story. This is that three-dimensional nugget of this story. The issue is in addition to the the swapping of information. By the way, remember that infamous wall, that intelligence wall on a federal level that supposedly caused or facilitated 9/11 or allowed 9/11 to happen. The Jamie Gorelick wall of that disallowed different agencies from sharing information. Well, this is the deliberate information sharing, despite what you're hearing. And what Joe's talking about is so important because you've got to understand this is taking place outside of the mechanisms that people are, outside of the mechanisms of the legal authority. In other words, when you start sharing information at these levels, this is all deliberate, Joe, and you know this, and I know you know this, but the golden nugget here is also to get at that HIPAA protected information, the information that's protected by the
protected.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, if you were on anti-anxiety medication 10 years ago for whatever reason, legitimate reason, and you're off now, and you're fine, and it was just an issue where maybe you couldn't sleep, and they prescribed you a medication for anxiety for 10 or 30 days. It happens. Well, this is going to show up in these very records. This is gun control. You see, people are expecting SWAT teams to come in and knock your doors in and come through the windows. And remember the movie Christmas Vacation with Chevy Chase? Where yeah, you remember that, where they came in through the windows and doors and stuff. This is what people are expecting. Look, they don't have to do that. Cut off the ammunition supply. Start going after the returning veterans. Start taking away the rights of people to own weapons, because 10 years ago you were on Ambien or Xanax or I'm not even sure what else, what other medication. And that this is what we're seeing today. This is an increment. Again, folks, this is a process. Okay, we are on the Titanic. This is a process. This is a means to an end. This is just one of those things that's taking place. I mean, it's important to bring this up because we're seeing it happen in New York State in mass numbers, in numbers that are not being reported by the media, where they're coming out. They're sending the various law enforcement agents out to take away the guns of people who have been on medication, whether it was a month ago or a year ago. They are sharing this information, and it's important to understand that.
That's right. Back to North Korea, or South Korea, I should say, and a treaty that has entangled us with the United Nations. Atlantic Alliance goes global. Head of NATO dispatched to South Korea.
Yep.
NATO head Anders Fogh Rasmussen has been dispatched to Seoul, South Korea, for a high-level consultation.
Yep.
The official disclaimer is that this had nothing to do with the ongoing U.S. DPRK confrontation. The trip was long planned but not connected with North Korean threats of nuclear war, according to Rasmussen. Rasmussen is slated to meet with newly elected President Park Geun-hye, Foreign Minister Young Bong-se, and Defense Minister Kim Kwon-jin. Although confirmed, Rasmussen will likely meet up with military brass of South Korea, U.S. Combined Forces Command. When asked if the trip was in any way linked with rising tensions on the Korean Peninsula, a NATO official candidly responded, rather than the current crisis, it would instead cover Afghanistan, where non-member South Korea has contributed some 350 troops to NATO-led forces fighting the Taliban. It is worth noting that Rasmussen's presence in Seoul coincides with a visit by U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry. What is at stake are high-level decisions. The presence of Rasmussen's also confirms that NATO has taken on a global military mandate well beyond the confines of the so-called Atlantic region. It also points to the possible military involvement at some future date of NATO member states in the Korean Peninsula. Now, what is NATO? NATO was founded in 1949. It was a treaty to affirm their faith in the purposes and principles of the Charter of the United Nations. For what? Peace and safety.
Right, and let's go back to the United Nations. Well, what's the United Nations? Well, the United Nations was planned by a guy by the name of Quincy Wright. It was the Declaration of the United Nations was authored and submitted on the 1st of January 1942. It became this world organization. United Nations Organizing Conference was held in San Francisco, California from April 25th through June 26, 1945, chaired by none other than Alger Hiss. And who was Alger Hiss, by the way, but a communist infiltrator here in this country. The United Nations was launched on October 24th, 1945. So what you're talking about, and again, this is necessary for the perspective, because some of these people are still in power by their family members here in the States and worldwide. And of course, the UN, not to belabor this, but the UN is separated in the General Assembly, the Security Council, and so on. But a big part of it is UNESCO. You're going to be hearing it's the United Nations Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. You're going to be hearing about that as well as time goes on with these various world events.
Yes,
but go ahead.
UNESCO is a huge part of. I got to find the papers.
Agenda 21, actually. Yeah. I mean, it's and you've got the government agencies. I mean,
these are the United Nations has these branches, and NATO, and we have NAFTA and GATT, but if you go to the United Nations site, UN.org, you can read their charter. Okay.
Oh, yes, and there's so much there.
Their preamble, they say, "We, the people of the United Nations, determined to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, which twice in our lifetime has brought untold sorrow to mankind, to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person, in equal rights of men and women and of nations large and small, to establish conditions under which justice and respect for the obligations arising from treaties and other sources of international law can be maintained, and to promote social progress and better standards of living and larger freedom. To these ends, they say, the practice tolerance and live together in peace with one another as good neighbors." Well, I agree with that. We should do that.
Well, we should, but not in the manner in which they laid out.
Yeah, and they continue to go on and say, armed forces, they will not use any armed forces. They're going to employ international machinery for the promotion of economic and social achievements of all people. But here's where it gets kind of iffy. Further in their same document in the charter, they go on to talk about peace and safety and aggression. They are not going to have an army, they say. They will use the force of member states. So if China is a member of the Security Council, they can use China's army.
And when people say, where's the relevance on this? When Steve Quayle talks about the troops here in this country. Go on.
No, go ahead, because there are troops here on this country.
Right. And when we talk about the North Korean issue, and folks, think about this for a moment. When we talk about North Korea, and here we are, we're waiting with bated breath about, well, are they going to launch? Are we going to do something? What's going to happen? Okay, once again, just form an orderly line of the lifeboats. Okay, we're all in this together. This is a process. It's not going to happen. But here's the thing. With what's going on, because of the United Nations and our other extra constitutional agreements and NGOs and what have you, but most importantly, our military arrangements with other countries, we have not raised our alert level within our military, because when the alert level of our military is raised, there are things that are legally required of the commanders and various other people within the military. So look at it this way. If you are a commander of a military base, and at this base you've got United Nations troops that include Chinese troops, and don't forget North Korea is a client nation state of China. North Korea is a client nation state of China. So you've got Chinese troops there reporting perhaps back to China. By increasing the internal alert level, that would restrict access to various areas and information against or away from the Chinese troops, who could perhaps and most likely report back to their Chinese counterparts in China, saying, "Hey, guess what? Ordinarily, under normal circumstances, we would raise this alert level so the troops who are working against us that shouldn't even be here to begin with, but they are here, so they're embedded here. They would not have the access they do have now." But folks, the sad fact is, we have not raised our alert level. The alert level of the United States military has not been raised. So has the access been cut off? No.
Should the alert level be raised, in your opinion?
Sure. And just like the killing of the dollar. Under what circumstance, legitimate circumstance, does it make sense for a nation to kill its own currency? Let me rephrase that in the context in which we're talking about right now. In what context, in the situation right now where North Korea, a client nation state of China, who is threatening to nuke or to hit us with missiles or essentially nuke us, how does it make sense for us to not raise the alert level to cause or to prohibit these troops from gaining access and information that could possibly assist their efforts against America? How does that make sense? It doesn't make any sense. So the question is this a matter of incompetence, or is this by design? Because you see, don't forget, and once again, we're dealing with China. We're dealing with other countries, but China in particular. In return for campaign contributions back in the 1990s, Clinton transferred secret military technology to China. Okay, we have to go back. We have to look at what has happened over the last couple of decades to put everything in context and perspective to see we've been sold out. We're being sold out, ladies and gentlemen. For a foreign power to get so much access in the West means that our nation states have been completely and utterly gutted. That, ladies and gentlemen, is no accident. That's by design. And you know what? That there's a dotted line that goes right back to the power brokers behind the people in power, otherwise known as the Illuminati. And there you have it, full circle, why we talk about the Illuminati, because in the end, they're the ones that are calling the shots. Where's the allegiance to? Is it to the United States of America? No. It's to the global cabal, the global mobsters that are running this game. And sure, you're going to have skirmishes between and within the mob and between different mobs. It happens. But in the end, who's the controlling factor? What's the controlling mechanism? It's that unseen force that Rachel Maddow and others says does not exist. And therein lies the context of that statement. It's a conspiracy theory. Yet it's happening right before our eyes.
Yes, it is. And what we're seeing in Greece, did you see this article today? Greece unemployment soars by 1.5% in 1 month, hitting a record 27.2%.
Yeah.
27.2% unemployment in Greece. We went over these numbers from January.
You're looking at seriously, that 27 and change, you're looking at about 1 in 3 people right now. The real number is 1 in 3, maybe a little higher than that.
So in January 2012, Greece's unemployment was 20.8%. So in about a year and a few months, it's went up 7%, about 27.2.
Right. That they're admitting to now.
Right.
And you're seeing the blowback in Greece. Oh, wait, you're not seeing that.
The reason I bring this up now and at all is because it is relevant, because we are following a model like Greece with our spending, our GDP being much, what is it, like the 100, what's our GDP to
it's
income
insane.
ratio? It's, yeah, we're in the red big time.
Right.
And it's like 50 times worse than Greece. And this Federal Reserve incrementalism that they are doing through their fractional reserve banking, incrementally watching the inflation rate go up, even though they will not report it. People are being robbed, even those by having their money in the bank. I'm not that old, obviously, but I remember a time when my grandparents made money off of having money in the bank. And they were talking, I think I mentioned this last night on Bloomberg Radio, they were actually calling out the central banks and saying that they were robbing the people who should be rewarded for doing the right thing by saving the money because the interest rates are so low. And I was surprised at the level of the rhetoric that was being used on Bloomberg, because they were telling the truth. And it was surprising, saying that the central bank lives in a parallel universe. They obviously don't understand or are not doing what needs to be done in order to grow the economy. But we have Mr. President. Mr. President is saying that he says the truth is our deficit is already shrinking. It's already shrinking.
Well, and there's a difference between the deficit. Believe it or not, that statement is true in terms of the deficit, but it's a false statistic.
No. How is it the deficit?
The deficit.
The ratio that they talk about.
When they cite the shrinking deficit, they're technically correct. The deficit is shrinking, but once again, there's the deficit.
You mean the deficit won't be raised at the pace it was raised? He won't add $6 trillion in as short a time as he did from before.
No, when we come back, in fact, I'll explain this. When we come back from the break, I'll explain about the deficit. But the segue, the most important part, without getting off track here, I think, is the situation in Greece. What we're seeing in Greece is going to happen here, and I really want to stand point on that, because right now what we're seeing unemployment figures that are just
astonishing. I mean, even here we had the unemployment rate, they went from 7.7 to 7.6, not because of new jobs added, but because of the amount of people who left for the workforce and left looking for jobs completely. They stopped looking for jobs completely. And
you can easily make up these numbers and change see what they're doing is they're changing the criteria for the unemployment numbers.
Right.
You have something called the U6 and such, but go on.
Continuing to take away the ability for people in the middle class and who are in a position to be able to prepare themselves to be self-reliant in case of an EMP or a natural disaster or some type of anarchy or social cultural disruption. They have siphoned so much money out of the American people that people who lived comfortably 5-10 years ago are living not comfortably, paycheck to paycheck. The IRS, this will be the most taxes they've ever collected in the history of the U.S. This is in 2013. We understand that the IRS does this illegally, and your wages, as it states in the Constitution, is your personal property, which they do not have a right to touch, but somehow, like the Federal Reserve Act and like the NDAA.
Look, I just want to say this, though.
So the taxpayers are not only are we paying records amount of taxes, they want to raise the gas tax. They want to raise taxes on fuels, on commodities.
Well, let me stop you right there.
They want to raise taxes on people.
Doesn't matter.
In higher tax brackets, but it does matter, because where is this money going to? We're funding enemies of Israel. We're using the money. Our tax money is going to fund abortions. Our tax money is going to kill children in other countries.
Our tax money is going to the central bankers. But
I could care less about it.
But the important part of this is everyone could give up all of their money, taxed 100%, and it wouldn't touch the federal debt.
Right. Of course. No.
It wouldn't pay off the federal debt. I'm sorry.
No. But it's one thing to be having somebody steal from you, okay? We're told in the Bible that we need to forgive others, and if somebody comes to take your jacket, you give them your shirt too. Stealing isn't the issue. I mean, it is a very bad practice.
If somebody puts a gun to your head and says, "Give me your jacket," okay.
Well, I'm just saying that stealing is one thing, but using our money using the money that was stolen from us to kill people, using it to oppress people, instead of help. I mean, if you're going to steal money, be a Robin Hood.
But that,
if you're going to steal from
that
the
strikes
give
my,
it to the poor.
But that's a very nature of the article that I wrote today. Silence of the Lambs in America. Look, at what point are we going to stand up and say no? Enough is enough. We're not going to do this anymore. See, in order to stop the mechanism, we've got to stop feeding the beast. You've got to understand that. We've got to stop feeding the beast. And how do we do that? You stop paying taxes. But no one wants to be the first or the only one to stop paying taxes, of course. And certainly no one wants to be the first to propose that as a solution. But how else do you stop? You just have to, kind of like that War Games scenario. Remember the War Games with Matthew Broderick back in 1983? What's the best way to win, or what's the only way to win a nuclear war? You don't play. A nuclear war game scenario, you don't play. Same thing here. What's the only way to stop what's going on? You stop feeding the beast. But look, Joe, I mean, right now, as we're seeing, more than 101 million working age Americans. They don't have a job in America today. The job recovery, it's a joke. It's a complete hoax. It's a myth. The percentage of working age population in the United States that had a job in March of this year was exactly the same as it was back in March of 2010. Look, the Greece situation at 27.9, I think you said, unemployment rate. It's more like 32 or 33%, 1 in 3. It's coming to this country here, and I mean, I don't know how else to but see, this is the explosive growth of poverty. And since you brought the economy up here, we've got to understand what's taking place in our country, and the fact that according to the latest statistics, 1 out of every 6 Americans is now living in poverty. Consider that that's going to be going up. When you add the number of low-income families and Americans, it's even more problematic. More than 146 million Americans are either classified as poor or low income. You've got 20% of all the children in the United States living in poverty. Greece is bad, indeed, but so is America.
Yeah, you have right now the government. The means total net government spending per household is $50,000, exceeding the median household income.
That's right.
Okay.
We're living in a deficit ourselves.
But no, yes, but no. It's not. We're not the ones doing it. Government spending per household exceeds median income.
Right.
It says this book called Completely Predictable. The combined spending of federal, state, and local governments per American household actually exceeds the median household income for 2010, which is the latest year for all relevant government data that is available. They go on to say, according to the numbers, according to numbers published by the Census Bureau and the Office Management Budget, net spending by all levels of government in the U.S. was, I don't even know if I can read what it is, $5,942,000,000, and that equated to 50,000 plus for each household, for each one of the 118 million households in the country. That same year, according to the Census Bureau, the median household income was $49,445. Why is that important? Because, like you said, you could take every single dollar that every single American makes, and it would not pay off the debt.
And therein lies the issue. The debt is it's unsustainable.
Not if, when.
It's right. Again, we're all on the Titanic. We know there is a huge gap in the Titanic's hull. We know that it's going to sink. We're all there. But we just have to now decide what we're going to do. Are we going to panic and say, oh my God, are we going to sit there and have a drink and listen to the band? Or are we going to in an orderly fashion, grab our loved one by the hand and walk to the lifeboat?
Yeah,
that's the situation.
And we're going to go out the break, and 661-244-9839 is the phone number. We're going to try to take calls on BTR. If not, we'll give you an alternative number to call, because it seems like Blog Talk's having some kind of problem.
Let's give out that alternative number if we have it handy. Because,
yeah, we'll do it right on the other side of the break.
All right.
They say in this article, the completely predictable book states that the person who wrote it says, I think the number demonstrates how completely predictable the financial crisis our country faces has become.
Well, don't be fooled by the fact that the Dow has been setting all-time high records, because it's the truth.
No.
The truth is that we're in the midst of a long-time economic decline, and things are going to get worse, ladies and gentlemen. If you know someone that's not convinced of this yet, well, God bless them, because things are not getting better in America. It doesn't take a rocket scientist, as they say, to understand this. We're right back after these messages. You're listening to the Thursday edition of the Hagmann Ag Report, this 11th day of April 2013.
If you are stumped, you don't know what kind of gift to give to a friend or a loved one, I'm telling you, you must go to 4physics.com. That's the numeral 4, PHYSICS.com. This is your one-stop shopping palace. That's the only way I can put it. I could spend easily an hour on this website. Innovative, fun, educational. There are games, books, weather instruments, unique time-telling devices, jewelry, optical devices, laboratory equipment. Let me give you an example. We all know we can tell time with a sundial. You've seen those advertised. Did you know that you could tell time by the stars? At 4physics.com, you can buy a horologium nocturnum. This was a navigational device used in the 15th century by navigators at night to tell time by the stars. It's beautifully crafted in the shape of a pendant made of bronze and pewter or gold and silver. Absolutely a stunning gift. I would be proud to give it to anyone. You must go to 4physics.com. Even if you're not stumped, that's 4physics. That's the numeral 4, PHYSICS.com. It's your one-stop shopping palace. Any problems that you have, I don't know what to get Grandpa, I don't know what to get my loved one, that's unique, you will find it at 4physics.com. Please take my word for it. Go to the website, but give yourself a lot of time because you're not going to want to leave. 4physics.com.
Listeners of the program, I just want to direct you to a fascinating product I take. It's nootropic mind power at mindregard.com. That's mindregard.com. Go to homelandsecurityus.com. Click on the graphic, the link to mindregard.com. In the upper right, it'll take you to the website of mindregard.com. And be introduced to nootropic mind power. It is a cognitive enhancement supplement, increases blood flow to the brain. It's got a lot of great functions, including building up a resistance, if you will, to genetically modified food and organisms. It's a great product. It really does enhance cognitive function. It provides a boost for mental sharpness, acuity. I take it. I endorse it. I do not endorse anything lightly, and certainly I don't endorse anything I don't take, use, or own myself. That's nootropic mind power at mindregard.com.
Doug Hagmann, one guy that doesn't need a bullhorn to get your attention.
You want answers! I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Hi.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We apologize for the sound there. The Blog Talk queue or Blog Talk board is having problems playing audio and taking calls. Troy, if you could post the number that people can call into the Skype thing so I can give it out. So we won't be using the Blog Talk call number tonight. Because last night, if you guys remember, it was very distorted. They're still having problems, obviously, today, as we hear in the commercials that we were playing. So we're going to give you a different number to call if you'd like to weigh in on anything we talked about tonight. That number is 321-252-8941. That's 321-252-8941. So give that number a call, and we will take your calls as they come. I guess, Troy, you could just navigate them, and whoever calls in, bring them on board in an orderly fashion, not all at once, please.
Well,
just messing around.
We're going to owe Troy a big, we already do owe him a big debt of gratitude, but my goodness, I want to thank him. This guy works 20 hours and doesn't get a break. Thank you, Troy, for being.
Korea may have nuclear missiles.
Well, folks, remember the AQ-Khan network? AQ-Khan, it's Pakistan, the father of Pakistan's nuclear science program. There was an issue today that came up about miniaturized nuclear warheads. AQ-Khan said that he saw miniaturized nuclear warheads back in 1999 in South Korea, that eventually made their way to North Korea. It's it's questionable. The question of whether North Korea can actually miniaturize a nuclear weapon remains pretty unanswered. It's not something I would consider. I don't know. I certainly would not consider this a threat to the extent that the press is making it out to be. And don't forget, what we're seeing here is more of a magic show than anything else. When all eyes are on North Korea, what would happen if some sort of weapon went off in Syria? That's the Middle East, and don't forget, it's the pan-Islamic Arab agenda of the Obama administration, the Obama regime, that is really taking center stage to this. The sideshow here is the North Korean situation. It doesn't diminish the threat; it just puts it in the context in which it should be.
All right. We have a caller on the line, Troy said, and I'm just going to let him navigate it, and you can bring the caller in whenever. Whenever they're ready, whenever you're ready.
How do we do this? We
can't see the caller, so it's going to be difficult. And
okay,
I don't want to overburden Troy by screening him, so he could just throw them on as they come, and we'll take them like that. And again, the number 321-252-8941,
and once again, Troy, God bless you. Thank you so much for handling this. And we're circumventing the BTR platform for clarity. And folks, once again, Troy has set up, the Christian United Broadcasting Network set up the Hagmann and HagmannReport.com page, where you can see us live in living color if you want to, as well as hear the audio. And then tomorrow or the following, the day after each broadcast, if you haven't already done so, you can subscribe to our broadcast via iTunes. It's pretty cool. And then Troy's working up a way to put up the video, our own video channel, for our program. So he's doing more work than 10 people.
Yeah, he is. And thank you, Troy, for all the hard work you do at Christians United Broadcasting Network Cuban on YouTube. And he's been posting our shows as well as a lot of other shows that he produces and works on. So definitely keep him in your prayers and check out his YouTube channel if you get a chance. Lots of other shows that are doing the same thing we're trying to do, which is trying to be a voice of reason and definitely a voice for the Lord in these times of confusion and oppression that we see, not in America but across the whole world. And
yeah, and absolutely, what a great service he provides, Troy provides, and the news that we're seeing is just so wow. It's
while
overwhelming.
we're waiting for the callers to come on, I don't know if you saw this. The National Hockey League has made a new initiative to support gay athletes, and what they're doing is, with growing expectations in recent weeks, this from the New York Times, they say that a gay male athlete in one of the 4 major professional sports leagues in the U.S. will soon come out publicly for the first time. The league has been exploring ways to accommodate and respond to such a landmark announcement.
Interesting. They're actually not accommodating. They are making an entirely new class for kind of an exceptional class, which is, it's not equal rights, it's not civil rights, it's special rights.
Yeah, and Troy, I don't know, it's saying...
Caller on, I think. Caller, are you there?
It's actually asking, it's saying we should call a number.
We should call a number.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Okay, well.
I'm confused.
417, are you there?
All right, we'll try and call him and see. I don't want to...
Well, it looks like there was a call at it. I'll tell you what.
Skype, we're hosting the show from our Skype. When you do that, if you hit a call or try to call somebody or answer a call and don't do it to add it to the group, it put this on hold and you guys will get dead air. So I don't want to...
Well, I'll tell you what. We can work through this, but... In the meantime, did we just get cut off?
No, I cut that.
Okay. All right. In the meantime, just getting back to the rhetoric with North Korea, ladies and gentlemen, once again, I would ask, while the evil machinations of Kim Jong-un and the company over there, while that is... while we are transfixed on that. And by the way, I had asked this earlier too. What was up with the basketball player Dennis Rodman going to North Korea?
Yeah,
and was this just a mere publicity stunt, or was? And I'm of the belief, and looking at this on balance, and I don't know how you feel about this, folks, but I'm looking at this. There's, to me, that there's something more to this than just this Rodman goodwill tour. Now, you feel free to call me crazy, but when you look at it in the perspective of world events, and you look at at Dennis Rodman, who he is, and his ability to leave the United States, go to North Korea, talk to the head of state in North Korea. Has this been done in the past? Well, it has to a limited extent. But at the end, and the question at the end was Rodman debriefed? And somebody asked Rodman if he was debriefed. No, he wasn't debriefed. So is it, and did you notice that shortly thereafter, his visit, the hostilities, as we would call them, the hostilities, or the sideshow, this magic show, began? Could it be? And you have to look at this again through the prism of in this case, through the prism of this Illuminous sect. Well, where does Rodman fit into this? And where does the music industry fit into this Illuminati sect? And you might think, well, you're getting off track. You're going down a rabbit hole.
No, you're not. Because the music, the new age, it is any top 40 station, even older rock and roll. I don't even know how far it goes back into the music, but music nowadays that you'll hear on most popular radio stations that are playing newer music, like I said, top 40, Billboard's top 100, or whatever they do, all these songs seem to be more and more, where before they would make a vague reference to somebody called the Rain Man. I don't know if you're familiar with that reference.
Yes.
And the listeners, I don't know how familiar you are with the name Rain Man. That's one example. All these singers that have these alter egos that they say helps them with their performance, or they change when they are in the middle or about to begin their performance, and basically into their alter egos, which is to me is like possession, being possessed. And we see that the music captivates the young people so much,
right? And they're in there. That's it,
right? And they don't see or hear those that don't understand the terminology of the Rain Man, of don't see the underside or haven't researched the underside of that arena, the entertainment and music Hollywood industry, where basically you cannot get ahead unless you will sell your soul to the devil. Right. And it's now public knowledge. Go look up Katy Perry. Says when she asked, how do you get famous? Sell your soul to the devil. Many singers, rappers, whatever, musicians have publicly stated this in their lyrics. They've had songs that they call. I remember the lyrics of one song, and Jay-Z, he's been making news on, saw him on Drudge. He went to Cuba. Yep. He has a song, right? A few songs. One is called Lucifer, and one song he made that was a big hit when we worked in New York City. It was on the radio constantly. I remember that. In the lyrics, it says, "Jesus can't save you. Life starts when the church ends." Yeah, exactly. And another song, and there's a popular YouTube video on this, The Forerunner. Chris Hudson, a guest we had on a long time ago, and somebody I'd like to have back on. He made a series of YouTubes, is called The New Age Agenda, where he breaks this down in a tremendous fashion and shows clips of Jay-Z, as we were talking about. He is singing, and they're actually real-time recording him in the studio singing, and it's a song called Lucifer, and he states a Bible verse, and then he stops and goes and listens to it, and he says, I swear I've never read the Bible in my life. I don't even know how I know that. Well, that that's the seducing spirits that come through the speakers when you're listening to that music, whether you're conscious of the evil that's embedded in it or not. And the movies are the same way. The TV and the news works the same way. And exactly. It will, if you do not know better, and the only way you would know better is by knowing the Lord and what He wants for us, because this Hollywood, whether it's music, movies, TV, it's all of this world. We're called to become and leave out of this world, not to kill ourselves out of this world, but to take ourselves out of the society, out of the culture. And I got to tell you, with the music industry, what you're talking about just now about removing oneself from that culture, what really struck me, and I didn't believe really the impact of this satanic aspect of the music industry, current and former, until I started getting into, when I was on Alex Jones last year, he was talking about a woman by the name of Lauryn Hill. Now, I had no idea who this woman is, a singer, but she got in trouble for not filing her taxes, for not paying taxes, for filing for a couple of years back in 05, 07. And her... what Alex Jones was talking about this Lauryn Hill, and what caught my attention, I suppose, from this. Lauryn Hill, you said? Lauryn Hill. Okay, I know who that is. Okay. What caught my attention about this was not her tax situation, but she authored a letter. It was a public statement, basically,
where she described a certain control, a manipulation, and even an exploitation of the music industry by a certain cabal of people that are unseen and referenced, without really saying it, but referenced this Illuminati satanic occult type group of people. Now, you can find her letter, I believe it's on Tumblr, I think it's called, or one of those websites where you can actually scroll through the documentation. But now she was charged with, by the federal government, but failure to file taxes, but decided to extricate herself from a system that was manipulated by people behind the scenes that it went on to describe this as truly evil and truly just really strange. So the story of Lauryn Hill, at least for those wanting a current example, would be the place to look. And she had she just pulled out of the industry. She was portrayed as crazy. And isn't that something? Isn't this how this this whole thing goes when you're involved in or when you're looking at things like or when you're trying to expose something, you're marginalized, you're called crazy, you're nuts. Well, unstable, she was called. Those who know about the dark side of the music industry know that she did the only possible sane thing that she could do in her situation, and that's get out of the situation that she was in. And once again, you can find the documentation relating to her experiences on TUMBLR. It's if you just search Lauryn Hill and TUMBLR, you can find her letter, her response. I think it's quite intense. But I think that her writings will show that she is not insane as colored or as marginalized, but a very sane individual. So the music industry is controlled by this Illuminist, which brings us back to, okay, so what was Rodman, or what was Jay-Z doing in Cuba, for example? I mean, the sports industry as well has got this aspect to it. All these, in fact, I've got documents right here about the Illuminati, how they have infiltrated all areas: the media, the banking system, the educational system, the government, the sciences, the churches, the entertainment industry, specifically that of Hollywood and that of the recording industry, music recording industry, including but not limited to that coming out of London. And if you take it a step deeper, look at the Beatles. And it's interesting because if you start getting into that, you can go down a rabbit trail that'll really take you into some interesting points. No, but I'm going to leave that one alone.
We need to hit on these interesting points. In the scriptures, it talks about these seducing spirits.
Right.
I was mentioning in 1 Timothy. 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 1. Now the Spirit speaketh expressly that in latter times some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils. The next verse. Speaking lies and hypocrisy, having their conscience seared with a hot iron, forbidding to marry and condemning to abstain from meats which God had created to be received with thanksgiving of them which believe and knoweth the truth. That is one reference to the seducing spirits in the Bible, in the New Testament. There are references in the Old Testament, in Deuteronomy. There are many spirits, some, I don't know, familiar spirits, that if you get a concordance or a prophetic dictionary of type, they talk about many different basically ways you can get yoked in bondage through these spirits that are not of righteousness, that are not of good. And we have to be on guard always. That's why it says stand, be sober and vigilant. Always, looking and making sure that you do not be deceived by any of these spirits, that you are not taken by surprise thinking you are doing something. This is why we always need to be focused on the Lord's will and not our will. You have
a very good point.
Spiritual manipulation, which is a term describing the imposition of a personal desire, an individual's will upon others whose decisions conflict with their own or with his own. That's 1 Kings 21, verses 1 through 19. It talks about that. Spiritual songs that say a lot of churches, me and you, Dad, we've experienced this firsthand. Right. We went to a church that played rock and roll, heavy metal,
almost heavy metal.
Yes,
to the extent that it perverted the lyrics.
And when the pastor was asked, you asked the pastor,
right?
Can you have the music, or can you have the church without the music? Because they made it a production. They made it seem like
it was like going to a rock concert.
Yeah, it really was. But what bothered me was that the people were, up and clapping when they're playing the music and falling asleep when they're giving the sermon.
Whether it's the church, the music industry, or whatever, this is what we're getting exposed to, and again, trying to really open people's eyes. Remember the what was it, the Grammys? Was it the Grammys on television? The 2012 Grammys, when Whitney Houston was found dead in a bathtub. It took place in just a horrible context. The show went on.
And look, this you're hitting right on a point I want to hit on. Why all the tragedies around these famous people?
Exactly.
There is, from what I understand, a law that if you want to be famous and sell your soul, you have to sacrifice something also. And you might not know what you're getting yourself into, but people, and you guys can go look this up and do your research on this on your own, but a lot of people who have became famous in a very quick fashion in the music industry seem to have tragedy follow them, where a loved one, like a mother, dies, or a spouse dies, or a
and by the way,
child
we see
dies.
this in politics as well. But with the 2012 Grammys, if you watch that and see the reason this is important is because we are watching this, our children, our families are watching this, we're being exposed to this. If you watched it and if you remember, it was like this occult agenda of entertainment that was kicked into high gear after the death of Whitney Houston. In the span of a week, you had the Super Bowl, if I recall correctly, the Grammys, which was the 2012 version, was just infused with ritualistic elements of occultism. It was crazy. The synchronicity with respect to these events would strain credulity to believe that this was by chance, not coincidental, because there was an underlying pattern of things that happened behind the events, both of in the entertainment industry of the sports Super Bowl and the Grammys. But when you look at what happened with the 2012 Grammy Awards, the entire event had the appearance of some sort of occult ritual with a blood sacrifice, a celebration, and even a rebirth, as it was shown on television. And some of the Yeah. Again, it was a very occultish type of an event where myself as an investigator would look at this and say, wait a minute, there's just something wrong with this. And even as just, you don't have to have an investigator's blood, churning in your veins to really understand there's something wrong. But, my question in this case would be due to the circumstances of the 2012 Grammys, why wasn't it canceled? But again, why are we talking about this now? What difference does it make? Well, if you look at the pattern, the continuing course of conduct of the people, the power brokers behind what we're seeing, look, we're seeing the same occult rituals play out today, whether it's by JC, what is it, JC, Jay Carney.
Jay Carney, yeah.
Okay, or Jay-Z. But all of this is being telegraphed to us, and see, they're laughing at us. The power brokers are laughing at us because they have this personal code of conduct and method of communication. And I think this is important for us to understand where we are.
Yeah, and going back to what we talked about with the in the last days, how we are seeing now unfold before our eyes, what we are seeing with the culture we live in, with the society around us changing, the people becoming more carnal who are of the world, while the people who are of the Lord are becoming more spiritual. We need to understand that we have to constantly be in a place where we are ready and are doing the Lord's will, not our own will. A lot of talk I've seen, and you were talking about this, the cheap grace
versus costly grace. That's right. And Dietrich Bonhoeffer was basically was, yes, this is Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And folks, if you don't have the book, it's called Bonhoeffer, Pastor, Martyr, Prophet, and Spy by Eric Metaxas. I got to tell you, what a tremendous book about what he had done in Nazi Germany and the parallels as well between Nazi Germany and today.
Yeah, I wanted to add to what you were talking about with that. 2 Peter, the Lord knoweth how to deliver the godly out of temptations, and to reserve the unjust unto the day of judgment to be punished.
Right.
But chiefly them that walk after the flesh in the lust of uncleanness, and despise government. Presumptuous are they, self-willed, they are not afraid to speak evil of dignities. And it goes on to say, having eyes full of adultery, they cannot cease from sin, beguiling unstable souls, a heart they have exercised with covetous practices, and cursed children, which have forsaken the right way. They have gone astray, following the way of Balaam, the son of Bosor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness, but was rebuked for his iniquity. The dumb ass, speaking with man's voice, forbade the madness of the prophet. These are wells without water, clouds that are carried with a tempest, to whom the mist of darkness is reserved forever and ever. For when they speak great swelling words of vanity, they allure through lust of the flesh, through much wantedness. Now, what do we see in the music? It's all prideful. It's all vanity. It's all materialistic.
And the Forerunner did a great job in bringing out that young man from 2.5 Men who described just that. In addition to the profanity, the profane nature of the show business. But yeah, it's all of that, what you just said. You're correct.
And it goes on in 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 20, it says, for if after they have escaped the pollutions of this world through the knowledge of the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, being saved, right?
Correct.
Okay. After they have known this righteousness, to turn from this holy covenant delivered unto them. But it happens according to the true proverb, that dog is turned down unto vomit again, and so that was washed to her wallowing in the time. It says, it would be better for them that had not known the way of righteousness than after they have known it and turned away from it. So,
wow.
I've seen people say you don't need to repent.
Of course.
That is not true at all. We need to always be in a state of repentance. We need to always be in a state of knowing we're not perfect, striving to be better.
Right. And that's the difference between cheap grace and costly grace.
Right.
It's a big difference.
It's the journey.
Yes.
If we are once saved, always saved, where is the struggle?
Where's the motivation? I mean, once saved, always saved. Okay. Well, I'm saved, so what I can do is what I want, when I want, and by my own means, by my own desires, right?
Right. And we can, like going to church on a Sunday and leaving there to go back to ungodly ways.
Sure. I've seen people, look, I've been to church, I've seen people leave church, and as they're pulling out of the parking lot, flip off, make an obscene gesture to someone who cuts them off, 2 minutes after they left the church doors. Explain to me how that makes any sense. Is that living a Christian life? By the way, I don't mean to jump here, but I do want to recognize Eric, and I want to thank you, Eric, for sending this. We had talked about Lauryn Hill here in the music industry. Eric just put up or sent me an email saying that Lauryn Hill did a great Illuminati song. You can search it on, search it. Just Lauryn Hill and Illuminati. Aaron Lewis as well. There's also System of a Down has a great song. I've never heard of that. Maybe telling us about FEMA camps. The lyrics go as follows, and I quote, they're gonna build another prison system for you and me to live in. And of course, that's accessible via YouTube. And he writes that, look, I know it might be a bit heavy, but listen to the message. And he says, I agree, it's everywhere in the entertainment industry. So, there is someone who has apparently done some research about this. And now, I didn't mean to get away from your biblical aspect, but just going back to Eric's email, I wanted to make sure people know that if they do search for Lauryn Hill and Illuminati, you'll see that she's sung about this, and there are other musicians who have spoken and sung about this as well. Yeah. Not a very comforting fact, folks. I got to tell you, not a comforting fact in the scheme of things when you look at everything being controlled by this occultist agenda.
No, but we do, I'll continue to go back. We do have the joy of the Lord and His promises that will not go unkept. In 1 Peter, it says, receiving the end of your faith, even the salvation of your souls, of which salvation the prophets have inquired and searched diligently, who prophesied of the grace that should come unto you, searching what manner of time the Spirit of Christ which was in them did signify, when it testified beforehand the sufferings of Christ and the glory that should follow, unto whom it was revealed that not unto themselves but unto us they did minister the things which are now reported unto you by them that have preached the gospel with the Holy Ghost sent down from heaven.
That's right.
And it says, wherefore gird up the loins of your mind, be sober, and hope to end for the grace that is to be brought to you unto you at the revelation of Jesus Christ, as obedient children, not fashioning yourselves according to former lusts in your ignorance, but as He which hath called you is holy, so you be holy in all manner of conversation, because it is written, be ye holy, for I am holy. And if we call on the Father without respect of persons, judgeth according to every man's works past the time of your sojourning here in fear. For so as much as you know that we were not redeemed with corruptible things, as silver or gold, for your vain conversation received by tradition of your fathers, but with precious blood of Christ, as of a lamb, without blemish and without spot, who verily was foreordained before the foundation of the world, but was manifest in these last times for you. By him do believe in God, that raised him up from the dead and gave him the glory, that your faith and hope might be in God. And that is the hope we have to rely on. The sacrifice has been made. The price has been paid. We just need to accept it and live according to his will. And some news I want to hit on here, as I just saw this when I was when you were talking. The Department of Justice is asking more for prisons than for U.S. security. President Obama's proposed 2014 budget for the Department of Justice will spend $4.1 billion more on prisons than on national security. Attorney General Eric Holder on Wednesday released the proposed 2014 budget for the Department of Justice, $27.6 billion. That is $1.6 billion less than 2013 due to the sequestration. So you have a $27.6 billion budget. $4.1 billion of that, almost 1/7,
right,
going to prisons? So here's how the breakdown goes of this money. $8.5 billion for federal prisons and detention. $4.4 billion for national security. $395 million for undefined protection from gun violence. And this is the first time I'm reading this list, so I'm surprised. $400 million for undefined protection from gun violence?
Well, there's always that level of there's always that number there, but to go to the extremes here, I think that the significant aspect of this is more going toward prisons.
Yeah. Than anything else.
Yeah, I think we have to really take a look at this in the context of the society of the police state society.
$8.5 billion going to prisons and detention centers, while you have $250 million going for civil rights.
Well, yeah, and again, it's the incarceration aspect of this.
This is the top law enforcement operation of the world. Who are they prosecuting? They're not prosecuting the banks. They're not prosecuting the criminals on Wall Street, the criminals in the government, the criminals in any of the private sector industries that they instead give waivers to, or the people that pay for access, pay for the privileges that that have been taken away from the rest of us. But they're going to $2.3 billion in assistance to state, local, and tribal law enforcements.
Right. Yeah, it's
almost $1 billion for enhancement on cybersecurity. $55 million increase for investing and prosecuting financial and mortgage fraud. $25 million increase for immigration enforcement. How are you going to enforce immigration when you are currently outlining a plan to make all enforcement citizenship?
Well, yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a 1,000-page bill on immigration reform they're working on right now.
Well, this is an immigration reform that no one has read and certainly no one understands. The so-called Gang of Eight, the 4 Democratic and 4 Republican senators, they've been meeting behind closed doors for the last couple of months to produce some sort of comprehensive immigration reform. Now, this also is kind of it does segue from the prisons as well, because in kind of a twisted way, but let me just say this: 1,000-page bill. No one reads. No one understands. You know how people say, well, you fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Look,
unless you're George Bush.
Well,
Fool me once.
Yeah, they had a little trouble with that.
Shame on me. Fool me twice. You can't be fooled again.
We got really screwed up with this 2,500-page Obama healthcare law, which just ran through Congress 3 years ago. And the surprises that were found in that bill, of course, are now causing havoc that people just are having a hard time understanding. But yet we're repeating the same mistakes now, or not we, this gang of 8 and these leaders that we elect and re-elect and pretend we have hope in. They are pushing this bill through to offer this immigration bill. And again, no one's read it, no one understands it because they haven't read it. But and I'm just going through different things here. For example, look at the Obama healthcare law, for example. It gives a better deal to non-citizens than to citizens. Go figure on that.
It's well beyond that, as we talk about how it's destroyed. We're a captured nation.
We are.
It's over for the U.S. and that's why we're going after the souls and trying to get them to Jesus, because
we're guiding them to the lifeboats.
More that are there. I would have a hope for this country if I saw more signs of life and people on fire for the Lord, but I don't see those. I mean, there are a lot of people out there that are doing it, but that's still not enough.
And that goes to the Silence of the Lambs in America article that's on HomelandSecurityUS.com and CanadaFreePress.com. If you read that, and if you understand what Dietrich Bonhoeffer went through, and of course his costly grace versus cheap grace. I mean, we have a lot of Christian pastors who have become lukewarm, even apostate. Yes. They're apostate in their views now, in their teachings. So how can we possibly repair the moral ills and the spiritual ills when in fact we've got a compromised clergy, if you will?
I know how. We start our own churches. We start our own ministries. Each and every single one of us who has the passion to want to bring people to the Lord and try to change things for the best way. I mean, to make things as best as they can be in these perilous times we live in.
Well,
and it's a lot easier said than done.
But see,
but nothing is impossible with God. All things are possible.
Right, but that's the importance of what we have here.
Okay, so how do we get people to have an attitude of boldness and have an attitude of I can do it, and with the Lord's help, I will do it, and I'm going to start right now. I mean, what is the straw that breaks the camel's back when it comes to motivation and drive of these things? And I know a lot of people have, their jobs, they have their families, they have things that are. They can't even get their families to agree on the religious element of the whole world. You're muted.
Well, yeah, and I think because I think the reason that happens to some extent is we're trying to pay too much attention to the details. We're trying to over-predict. Look, we can see what the conditions are. We don't have to know with precision exactly what's going to happen. So when you talk, and so when people say, boy, like we read yesterday on air about the person saying, oh, crying wolf, I'm crying wolf. No, we're warning people about the direction we're headed. We're headed in a certain way. We've hit that iceberg. If we're on the Titanic and the band is still playing, once again, instead of shouting and saying, "Hey, the boat is going to sink," calmly nudge the people within your sphere of influence in a certain direction, calmly walk them to the lifeboats, and I think, once again, understand that God has, God by His Spirit will give you, the listener, divine insight. It's going to be personal to you. It's going to be different between people. It's going to be different. It might be different for Joe or for John or for Betty than it is for Mark or Ruth or Tim. And we can talk about generalities to our family, but once we get into constant badgering and specifics and attempting to over predict, then I think we get in trouble. But everyone, I would think, can see that we're in a ship that's going down, and if you can't, maybe the water that's up to your ankles might serve as a reminder. But I mean, look, we're still dealing with the human element here, and everyone rises to their own level at a certain time. And I think that, I mean, even if we talk in generalities and just said, look, look at what's happened. Look at Katrina, for example. Look at Sandy. Government's not reliable. Who's going to save you? Who's going to be ready to take care in the course of an emergency? Who will be ready? Who's going to? So it should be you. But again, I believe God by His Spirit will give you divine insight, and it's going to be very personal to you, and you're going to have to work that out on your own. So we're just giving you the zone, telling you kind of the fact that, hey, we just hit an iceberg.
I want to tell you this. I didn't mention this earlier when I should have. A listener saw their spouse saw on Route 176 eastbound between Denver, or headed towards Denver, tons of military Humvees, 15 passenger vehicles on train cars. Tons and tons of military tan Humvees, long 15 passenger vehicles on train cars. More of these military movements we are seeing.
Yeah, and I think that's important. I think that's kind of a signal. Joe, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but I think the more and more we see, now a lot of this stuff is for routine maintenance or for painting and stuff, but the more that we see these unusual movements, I believe that they're prepositioning assets, and I could be totally off base on this, but what other reason would make sense for the prepositioning of assets throughout the United States? They've got to be expecting something. And what are they expecting? They're expecting, obviously, in my view, civil unrest. And I think, unrest because of the bank failures or because of any number of possibilities. Does it really matter if it's it kind of does in a way if it's a hurricane or EMP or we're going to prepare differently. But the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, for whom does the bell toll? Well, it tolls for thee, and I think that's what we're coming to that realization. And I'm getting reports here of planes flying at low altitudes over various urban areas as well.
Yeah, we had earlier this week helicopters in our area, and Jan in Pennsylvania saw the same thing as I did. These double-bladed cargo, I think I forget the name, C something 47s, I was told they were.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and they were very low very, very low. Green and red lights, and it was in the middle of the night both times. And me and my wife saw it. We couldn't get a picture because they were so low. And you're in the city and you have no... what's it called? Just flat land to look. But many people, I could go through my emails and talk and read off stories, military planes. Here's an email right here. They say they're coming from, over the past half hour, about 17 helicopters in a half-hour period. They said that, and I don't know where this gentleman's from, but basically they continue to fly over, and they ask if we have any idea what's going on. They were headed east, headed toward the south, turned again, and headed east. They're uploading photos. Hopefully we do get those photos, and we may post them on the website. And yeah, if you guys see something like that and have a chance to get a picture of it, definitely do that. And we do have the photos. Okay.
Yeah, I do have some photos here. I believe it's from the same source. What blows my mind, by the way, and I don't know how many people know this, but think about this, and then think about the insanity behind this. The United States, the Pentagon, we're buying Russian military helicopters in spite of a congressional ban on such sales. And by the way, the U.S. is selling military aircraft to Egypt, while at the same time Egypt is proposing a merger with Sudan, genocidal Sudan nonetheless. And wow, it does. You can't even make this stuff up. And of course, these are all conspiracy theories. Of course, but think about this: Russia is selling the Pentagon military helicopters. This, despite a ban of such. But once again, we're living in a time, in the time of Noah and Enoch, Noah's grandfather. He knew what was coming, and of course, Jeremiah talks about being watchmen, and this is where we stand. We're trying to make sense of it all. We could talk hours upon hours about North Korea. We could talk hours upon hours about the gun ban. We could talk hours upon hours about the various other issues. But when it all comes right down to it, they're all interconnected, all interrelated, and they're symbiotic in nature. There's a symbiotic relationship between all of these things. To what? To our utter enslavement. And the economic aspect of things is so important, folks. You've got to really understand how important the economic part of this is, because we as a nation are going to collapse. Our economy is going to collapse. We have to be prepared for it, and that's what we're trying to do. That's, again, orderly fashion, walking slowly to the lifeboats. Take your loved one's hand and prepare, because, and by the way, expect to get wet. Expect to get a little wet. Don't expect not to get wet. It's going to happen. It's bound to happen. But don't let that just totally consume you. I mean, you're going to get wet. Troubled times are coming. You're going to get wet. Bad stuff is going to happen. But at least you're not going to be sitting in the promenade as the band plays while the ship is sinking. At least you're going to be taking the proactive steps to get out of the way. And that's important.
And on a closing thought here, Dr. Chappie in the chat room is talking about the Roku. And it's interesting. I know it's really not important, but my wife bought one of these a couple months ago. I had no idea what it was. And this thing is a little box that hooks up to a TV through a USB cord. And if you have something like Netflix, or is it Netflix? What's that movie?
I give up.
No, Netflix. Is that, Netflix?
Netflix? Okay.
I can't remember.
What about it?
You can use that. They have this Roku box. You can even watch Beck if you have a subscription, or Jones if you have a subscription to. There's all these free news stations like RT, Al Jazeera, international news stations that cover more important American news than anything you'll find in America. Then there's scriptural stations. There are many. There's TBN, but then there's there's stations devoted that you can get for free, devoted to helping you understand the Bible by having different people for 24 hours. This is constant, and it's never repetitive.
90 seconds.
I think Pastor Langford might have that, or might be on that.
Yeah, but it's for those who don't have cable, because I don't have cable, and I don't know, I don't use it that much, but it's worth it, because you can get free stations, Bible stations, news stations, things that are important, not, paying $100 for stuff that is unimportant. You can pay a one-time fee, whatever the Roku box costs, and get free important stations like the Bible station. And there's a station that just reads the Bible the whole time. There's a station that people preach and not like church, but read the Bible and help interpret it in the way they see it. And there's a lot of benefits to it. But yeah, that's my end of that. There you go, Dr. Chappie. I'll write up a list for you. But each and every one of you, I want to thank you for tuning in tonight. Working on a guest tomorrow night at last minute, I know. But Paul McGuire, hopefully the following week. And also going to be in contact with Nathan Liao and a few others. And we don't know when V's coming back on, and several people have asked.
Right. It's a scheduling issue as opposed to anything else. So, but folks, do us a favor. Hit your knees tonight. Tell someone that you love them. And take one step, even if it's a small one, to prepare.
And we love you. God bless each and every one of you. Have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow at the same time.